Hello, folks. Miguel Arati back here on the MMA Museum podcast. And as usual, we've got one of our deep dive interviews. Dutch fighting legend, another Dutch fighting legend we have here is Martijn De Jong. And Martin started his MMA career back in the 90s. He's still involved in the sport. He's got on from fighting to become a trainer and a trainer of champions. He's in Manchester, England right now for the UFC. I think it's UFC 304. Martin, what are you doing? Who are you cornering?
Hi, Miguel. It's great to meet you again, and thank you for being on the podcast. Currently, I'm cornering Marcin Prachnio, who's a light heavyweight fighter. This will be his 9th fight in the UFC. He'll be fighting Modestas, which is a local fighter. It's the same guy who broke his knee against what's his name again? Martin fought him as well before. He's the guy from Las Vegas. Khalil Roundtree. Maybe a lot of people remember that. Khalil Roundtree gave a knee kick, the side kick to the knee, and then the guy broke his leg. So he's fighting the tall guy. He's a good fighter. He's a decent kickboxer. My guy his background is from karate, so it's going to be an interesting fight. Although his karate competitions, his Kyokushinkai karate competition was like 15 years ago, but he's still got that unorthodox style with a lot of kicks, a lot of punches from strange angles. So it's going to be a nice fight on Saturday.
Okay, good. And I'm glad you're there. You're enjoying it. You're still in the game, obviously. And you go back to the 90s, as I was mentioning, in terms of MMA and fighting. How'd you start? Because as a young man, Holland could be rough. A lot of the Holland guys came from like Bob Shriver, Gilbert Ivell. These guys came from, a little bit of a street background. What was your background? How did you get involved in this in the very beginning?
So for me, I was not really from the streets. I knew a lot of guys from the streets, but I was not literally from the streets. But I started when I was 13 years old with traditional jiu-jitsu, this Japanese jiu-jitsu, and I really liked it. I'm 50 years old, turned 15 last week, so I've been in the game for 37 years now. Started with that, and after I became black belt second degree in that, I wanted to know more. I wanted to develop myself more. So the traditional jiu-jitsu was more or less like a self-defense, but at that time they're just starting up this fighting system where you could also have a competition form where you could strike, do takedowns and ground fighting, but it was all semi-contact, right? So I was thinking to myself, okay, now my takedowns are okay, my ground game is okay, but my striking, I think it needs some improvement, and I really like it. So I started doing karate back then. So when I started doing karate, I started doing competition as well, became a 2-time Dutch champion. But still, I thought it was like, there's more to it, And then I started training with the national team in jiu-jitsu because I really liked the all-round style. And there was a very famous guy called John Blooming. He was a legend from the Netherlands, and he always said, you know what? If you're a judo guy and you're world champion judo, but somebody punches you in the face, what will happen then? Can you really fight? And if you're like a karate black belt or even boxing world champion, but somebody takes you down to the floor and holds you and puts you in a chokehold or in a submission, what can you do then? Can you really fight? And if you say you can really fight, then means you have to know everything, like from standing up to takedowns to ground fighting. I was really like, I feel him, it hit me so hard. I was like, okay, I need to improve in all areas of the game. But back then, of course, there was no MMA. The term MMA didn't exist. So I started training, focusing more on this fighting system with the traditional jiu-jitsu guys, where I met Remco Pardoel. Remco just had his fight in the UFC #2. And there was not so much internet back then, so there was no fights you could see, but he had those videotapes from the US. And he gave it to me, and I started watching it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. We saw Royce Gracie, we saw Remco Pardoel, and all the other guys, Gerard Godot, another Dutch legend, of course, who had the very, very first UFC fight. And I was like, okay, this is amazing, I really want to, I don't know, maybe I don't have the guts yet to do it, but I feel this is really it. So I started training with Remco. He was more into this full contact stuff. And one thing led to the other. And eventually I fought my first, at that time it was called free fight in 1996. It was, I believe, or 1995, 1996. And from after that, you know, I got invited by a Japanese organization. And I fought in 1997. Fought my first fight in Japan. Yeah, and it all went quicker and faster right after that. So before, and I think in Japan it was called Valetudo. Yeah, and then I did other fights, mixed fights, free fight, and eventually the term MMA was thrown
the
around.
MMA popped up much later. Now, I'll tell you, Holland is really, you mentioned Gerard Gordeau, Remco Pardo. I think Remco Pardo, Orlando Wiet, who's also Dutch,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, you guys were pioneers from the very beginning. So you watched the earliest UFCs is when you got into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
For
were a
sure.
young man at that point still, though. You know, you were
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yeah, I was around 20 years old. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So it's amazing stuff. Now, what's Remco like? You know, he seems like a guy that I don't know. Did he have the personality to do this? Is he mean enough?
He's a special kind of guy. And he was not really like when he back then in the UFC, I don't think he had really that mentality, that MMA mentality. But on the other hand, he was courageous enough to step in that cage, you know, without any rules. So he went in there. I don't think he had that killer mentality, but he was brave enough to step in and to develop himself. So he got over his fear, got in that cage, and yeah, he started doing what a lot of people didn't dare to do. So that's where I salute him. Yeah, he was the pioneer, one of the pioneers in Holland in teaching this full contact, all round kind of style. So, but I think he's better as a teacher than he was as a fighter.
And most guys in Holland come from the kickboxing background. You know, there's a lot of Muay Thai there and things like this. And you're the unique piece of having been a ground fighter also at first. And that's what I remember about you is that you were always the submission specialist from Holland. You know, that kind of thing. And Remco, obviously, with his judo, was another one of those ground fighter guys. So that's what makes Holland a special place for that stuff. But the fighting back there was rugged. You mentioned the free fights, and those were cage fights with like no rules whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And your referees were not especially. I don't want to say good
it was like
referees. You know
guys.
what I mean?
Yeah,
The referees had the best seat in the house. They were fans. They were just watching. So,
yeah, yeah.
what do you remember about those early events? Because I remember that they were incredibly rugged.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, you know, the referees, they didn't even know. So like there was even like one time my student Rafael LaRose, who was always was one of my first students, but he was also one of the first fighters. He got a guy in a triangle choke, right? And after the fight, nobody knew what happened. Only the guy started tapping out, right? And after the fight, his coach called me, and he was also one of the organizers. Said, "Okay, Martijn, what was it exactly what he did? What kind of leg lock was that?" Leg lock? No, man, it was a triangle choke, you know, and I started explaining them because they really didn't know. They had no idea what was going on the ground. Yeah, we had the luck that we came from a submission background, but like you said, most of them were from a kickboxing background. Those were the tough guys. Those were the guys who are like willing to step up and do this kind of crazy style events. Yeah, and there were very little submission guys. So actually, when I was fighting in Holland, most people knew me as a ground fighter. Most people knew me as a submission artist. But then on the other hand, because I started fighting in Japan pretty soon, when like I said, my first fight was 1997, I guess. And there, because I have that background from Holland, and I was training with the tough kickboxers and the Thai boxers, and you know all those guys, I preferred to fight standing up because those guys were very good in submission as well. You know, Japan, as you know, is more in wrestling and ground finding. So yeah, depending on where I was fighting, I adapted my style, and I think that was one of my. I think at that time, you know, in Holland was one of the unique capabilities. I could fight standing up and I could fight on the ground. Yeah.
You mentioned Raffles LaRose. I remember Raffles had a huge feud with one of the Gracies, right? Was it Robin Gracie or one of the guys from
No. I
Spain?
think it's the one from yeah. This guy, but it was not Ruffles. It was what you mean is the guys from France. There were two guys from France. the two brothers, and they had a problem with the guy with the Gracie brothers
Oh,
from
okay.
Alvin Gracie from Spain. I
I remember
remember.
Raffles from that era, because the
I think
name.
Raffles was. I think you met him when he was fighting Simonov in Russia or something. I don't know. Yeah, he
Okay,
was one of the first guys out there. Yeah.
you fought Semenoff too. We're going to get to that. So how did it come about? Now I know that back in those early days, you had some guys going over, and Japan was big. Where the fighting was big. Some guys going over there. I think maybe the first Dutch person that I remember fighting in Japan was Merlos Conan. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
what do you
yeah, yeah.
remember about Merlos?
Yeah, I mean, like he was very, very talented. She was 15 years old when she came in and stepped into my gym. Started training her. Really a girl from a small village, not from the streets at all. But she had a determination. Her father was my teacher in high school, by the way, so that's fun.
Okay,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and she was like a really, yeah, how do you call this? Like a very naive girl, and she started fighting because she had to go on a bike every day. Drove like I don't know what is it, half an hour through some kind of woods, and she wanted to feel safe because she wasn't secure at all. So she started training more as a self-defense kind of with this idea in the back of her head. So yeah, once it started, she did actually pretty well. She was strong as an individual, and she was very technical, especially on the ground. And then when I organized the first Shuto event in Holland, was the European Championships Amateur Shuto. I said, Marloes, why don't you join? I think you're good. I think you have the skill set, the talent, and to compete in this amateur competition. And you're wearing a headgear, you're wearing shin guards, knee protection, and gloves, obviously. And there's no punching on the ground. So why don't you join? I think you will like it. She was like, wow, she was shocked. You think I can do that? I said, sure, I think you can do that. So she was 18 years old at the time, and she joined. And when she got in this super focus, and she hit the girl down. She went down right away, followed up with an armbar, and she submitted her. At that time, you have to think it's not at all like it is today. I was the promoter. I was the representative of Shuto in Europe. I'm still the representative of Shuto in Europe. I was the one who putting all the chairs there. I was putting all the posters outside. I was the one providing the event with fighters, and I was the referee. So I was the referee there. So because nobody could do it, right? I thought I was the best man to do it. So because I got that education from Japan. So I was the referee, and Marloes won. I pulled her off the girl after she made the armbar, and she was like, what happened? What happened? Did I win or what happened? I said, no, you won already. Relax, you won. It's like, what, really? So she was so surprised. She was really like in that super focus, and she did really well. And right after that, I was in Japan for another competition, and they called me up. Gerard Godot called me up. It's like, I got a opening for a girl fighting in Japan, and I saw your girl fighting in that amateur competition. Do you think she want to join? And I called us like, I'm in Japan right now, in this payphone, right? I'm in Japan right now, and next week there's a competition just for female. Are you interested? And it's like, Japan? Oh, wow. She was very focused about Japan. She really loved Japan. And then she came over, she joined the competition, defeated that girl within, I don't know, 2 minutes or something. And yeah, took off from there. And right after that, I think it was only a few weeks after that, there was this World Championships, this remix championships, where there was a 8 or 16 women tournament with no rules, no weight class, no nothing, and she won that tournament. I think at that time she won like $100,000 or something. It was
Exactly. That's what I remember. Is she fought Becky Levi, who was Dan
yeah.
Severn's trainer, and
Yeah.
a giant Russian girl.
Yeah.
And this is in the '90s. Merlos quickly became the number one fighter in the world. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
she extended
Overnight.
when she went to Bellator, and she won championships later on in her career. She had one of the most amazing careers. And what's incredible is what you mentioned too. Also is, let's be honest. You fought a long time in the '90s and into 2003 and stuff. Did you ever make $100,000 in a fight?
I never did that.
She
No
won
way.
$100,000 in a women's tournament in
That's
Japan.
nuts. Yeah.
So it's crazy that that type of payday came early for her, and good for her. You know what I mean? Because it's still not enough money, but
No,
nobody made that kind of money back then. You know what
no
I
way.
mean?
No chance.
So how did you get to Japan? What was the situation that happened for you to get to Japan? Gerard Gordeau gave you the connections?
No, actually, it was Remco Pardum.
Okay.
And in 1996 or 1997, I forgot. I think it's 1997. We went there as Japan versus Holland thing. And it's called
Okay.
to the Japan Open, I think it was. One
Yeah,
of the
you fought Taro Obata.
Yes, exactly. Who became a very good friend, by the way. So it was Holland versus Japan, a very nice event. Um, yeah, the rules were was like it was in the beginning, you know, so not so no sanctioning by a athletic commission or whatever, but it was really good fun. And we went there. I defeated the guy, and the next year, 1998. Um, I broke with Remco Pardum. We had our differences, and I decided to go by myself. And then a lot of all the other guys who also had some problems with Remco, they decided like, okay, this stuff happened here, and also don't want to train with him anymore. We don't feel good with him. So yeah, it turned out that some of them they came and trained with me because there was nobody back then. You know, there was only some strikers, some wrestlers, but no really MMA guy, right? And I was one of the first guys who putting it all together with my submission background, and I'm also training with the kickboxers. So they said, okay, can we train with you? I said, yeah, you know, you do what you have to do, but I'm not telling you you should come and train with me. But if you want to come and train and spar with me, you're happy to come over. And then the Japanese guys, they found out that most of them that were training with me and nobody was training with Remco anymore. So they approached me and said, okay, you know what? We're going to do an event in Nagasaki where it's about the 450 years trade connection between Holland and Japan. And we want to do another Holland versus Japan event. Do you have some guys? Are you interested to come over? I said, yeah, why not? So the next year we went there with another team, and yeah, we decided to compete in that competition. Right after that, they saw one of my guys who passed away already. You saw him fighting Akira Shoji, and his name was Adriano de Souza. And it's like, okay, this guy is so spectacular. He was a Brazilian guy with his background in capoeira. They liked the style. He did very well. He fought Akira Shoji in a draw, and they invited him to fight in Shudo. And that's how I got into Shudo a lot. So he fought there.
Right, because in the 90s you were the European representative, and you mentioned you still are with Shudo.
Yeah.
Talk about Shudo and what they brought to the game, because that is, to me, the especially back then, was the most advanced organization. You know what I mean? In terms of you go from complete headbutts, no gloves, free fight complete, to an organization with rules and the catch and things like that. So,
Yeah.
how did the Shudo relationship come about?
Yeah, so they invited me and Manabu Takashima, who's a Japanese journalist. He really supported that, and he was a big fan of Shudo. He was a big fan of intercontinental relationships, so he spoke English. So he invited me to come over to Japan, and I stayed there after that event in Nagasaki. I came back to Tokyo, and he said, okay, you know what? I have a very small apartment. I'm living there with my wife. If you want, you can stay for 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks, and you train with all the Japanese guys, because he saw that I was not the typical Dutch fighter, right? I had some submission skills. I was very interested in becoming a complete fighter, while most of them, they were more kickboxers and who were just holding on the ground and hoping they could get up, or the referee would stand them up and they start striking again. So he said, okay, if you want to come over, I introduce you to all the gyms. You can train with all the Japanese guys here. So that's what I did. I got a lot of connections there. I got very much involved with the Shooter organization, because the Shooter organization, like you said, was I think it's the first professional MMA organization in the world, because since 1985, they already had a rule set. They had referees, they had timekeepers, they had judges, they had a ring and they had, as you know, the Japanese are very strict. So they have strict rules, and they had a doctor ringside. It was not always the case, you know. So it was very organized. And they had this system where you could grow as Shuto grappling, where you could only do grappling. Then there was amateur Shuto, where you had all that headgear and shin and knee protection and gloves, and you know, and no ground and pound. and then you could move on to like a B class and an A class, and it was very different. And I think this is still one of the best organization for a fighter to grow up in, and that's what I really like. And there's like a structure, you know.
Yeah. Now, when you go, so you're in Shudo, you start to become familiar with the Shudo fighters, and you see guys like Noboru Asahi and Rumina Sato. These guys were so far ahead of the
I know.
game. That's just spectacular stuff. Did you get to see some of those fights live?
Yeah, sure, of course. And I was training with those guys as well. Asahi was like, he was such a technical guy, and his leg locks were from another world. Like back then, there were almost no leg locks. He showed me so many leg locks. He was amazing. I was training with Anthony Nui back then in his gym, and Noboru was there. I trained with Sakurai, Hayato Sakurai, Rumina Sato, all those top guys back then, you know. But also with Kikuta, one of the first Japanese ADCC champion, Sane Kikuta. Yuki Sasaki, who I fought later on. I trained with all the guys, you know. It was amazing. And
It's amazing,
although they
man.
didn't speak English and I didn't speak no Japanese, was so much love and willingness to share techniques and to learn from each other and train together very respectfully. I love it. I've called Japan my second country, you know. I just love it over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story about Kikuta. I was with him in Abu Dhabi when he won the championship. And, you know, Kawasaki was there also. And Kawasaki had helped him get there. And he came to me and he, you know, with a translator, and he says, "You pay me, not Kawasaki." Very Kawasaki was going to take some of his money.
Yeah.
So it's very funny. So
Yeah, and also I forgot to mention Yuki Nakai, of course, because he's my teacher. He gave me my black belt, by the way, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have so much respect for this man. He's like unbelievable. You know what happened, right?
with Gerard Godot.
Yeah, he was blind. Gerard put a finger in his eye, and actually he was blind, but he never taught anybody for years because he didn't want to stop the rise of MMA in Japan, because he knew that if he would tell people that he was blind, newspapers would write about it, people will talk about it, and it will stop the rise of MMA. And yeah, he didn't want it to happen. So it was a really dirty move, I have to say, by Gerard Godot. But he kept it quiet. That's how strong he is. That's how much of a samurai he is. I really respect him a lot.
For sure. And Gordeau is another one of those Dutch bad boys. I tracked him down. I think he's living in Portugal now.
Yeah. He has a house there for a couple of years already.
So yeah, kind of crazy. Let's go back. You in between here, it looks like you did a Red Devil fight. So you went to Russia as well. What happened in the early days to go to Russia? Because Russia's another one of those places with, you know, if you remember Mikhail Ilyukin and guys like this, they also had some advanced guys because of Sambo and stuff. So what was your exposure to Russia?
So, of course, Appie Echtelt, who's one of the guys from Holland, he was very close to the Russian guys, Vadim, you know, and they were doing the Red Devil M1 shows and a lot of cooperation. So he got a lot of Dutch fighters over to fight in Russia as well, and Russian fighters to fight over in Holland. So we were exposed to the Russians very early on. I like the mentality, a very strong mentality. Good sambo, and they're always coming over to fight, you know. There was never a dull moment with those guys. So
no, for sure.
fight for sure, you know. So,
I know Appie, and we did a Russia versus USA show in New Jersey with Appie, and those guys are with Red Devil, Vadim, and stuff. And I actually got to make a fight for Fedor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Fedor, when he fought in Russia for the first time in a long time against Matt Lindland, this was me. That was my fight.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
So,
I remember that.
so yeah, those guys, much respect to them. But now you go back to the early days of the Russian stuff. This was crazy stuff, though. You know what I mean? Renzo Gracie talks about taking Ricardo Morai to a fight there. He wins a tournament. And, you know, having to go get paid with guys with machine guns and things like this. What do you remember about those things?
Yeah, all those things happen. And it's not only Russia. I went to Italy as well, Napoli, you know. There was also crazy shit going on. I went to, of course, you know, in Japan as well, back in the days, there was a lot of Yakuza there, you know. And it was all over. In Holland also. we're not like the choir guys who were there organizing MMA events. So it's like tough guys, you know. Like I have to say they're
Boss
gangsters, you know.
Boone and yeah,
Boss knows.
yeah.
Boss knows.
I think Boss
It's
Boone
like
is living in Thailand now.
Boss Boone, yeah, he's in Thailand now.
So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely crazy guys. Now, I just recently rewatched Bob Shriver against Gilbert Ivell.
Yeah.
So these guys just crazy stuff. Those guys to watch and to be involved in
Which
and
fight did you
stuff.
watch? Was it the third fight, or I think that
First,
three
the
fights?
first,
2 or 3. The first one. Yeah, was it
yeah,
open hands, right?
yes, yeah, but they
Yeah.
beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was hard. And the third fight as well was like crazy. It was with the small gloves in Ahoy, Rotterdam. And at that time, I think I became the Dutch champion in MMA. And Gilbert was fighting Bob, I think for European title or something. But it was crazy, like a crazy event. And rules were not as they are today. And were tough fights.
Yep.
That was
Well,
one of the toughest fights. But Bob was always in tough fights, you know, fighting
yeah,
Gilbert,
no,
fighting, you know.
I
He
remember
fought.
Bob Schreiber also going to Russia, and
Yeah,
fighting
he didn't care.
what was his name? It doesn't. He fought a couple of Russian guys, obviously, and
Rules, no rules, didn't care.
Bob understood the show also. I remember, to me, there was a long ramp and there was a strobe light, and Bob came in walking like a robot, and it was the
Yeah,
best entrance I ever saw. You know what I mean? It was just the greatest thing. And he's a nice guy, but a guy you don't want to mess with,
yeah,
and
right.
probably a better street fighter than a MMA fighter. Now, let me ask you, when you are training with the Shudo guys and you're learning the techniques and things, and then you go fight in Shudo, you fought their best guys. Like, for example, Masanori Suda was
Yeah,
their champion for a long time.
yeah.
What do you remember about fight? Did you fight for the belt in Shudo?
I did not fight for the belt. I was ranked number 3 at my best. I was third at my best in the shooter ranking, in world rankings. But I fought Masanori Suda, and I have to say I was a little bit, back then I don't want to say I was intimidated, but still, you're fighting the Japanese guys, the top of the world, and I was too emotional. Actually, as a funny fact, I'm here with Marty Pragnio, but also Costello van Stenis, who's a Bellator title contender. He's in the corner. He's a sparring partner of Marty, and I was telling those stories from back in the days. And one of the stories I told him that when I was fighting Masanori Suda, I got too emotional. And we're talking about, calm state of mind when you're fighting. But at that time, I was young, of course. And I was like, like I said, in Japan, I mostly fought standing up because the guys were so good on the ground, right? I just broke my eye socket. I had a blowout fracture there. And I was a little bit insecure about the eye. It was like, I think a year after the surgery or something. When I fought him, I think I did pretty good. But then there was a point that I was so annoyed with him taking me down or grabbing me all the time. I was like, okay, now I'm going to punch the shit out of him. So I was standing. I saw him moving up to me. I was like, okay, now I have you right in my side. I'm going to punch you as hard as I can. And I threw the punch, but with way too much commitment. And he just ducked under and he took me down, And I was like, oh, shit, now I'm on the ground. I let the emotion get the best of me. And that was a very good lesson. And from that moment on, I really focused on controlling my emotions. And so when he took me down, I think he passed my guard right away. And he went to knee on the belly. And he hit me a couple times on my eye, like right into my eye, which I just broke, like 40... like almost a year ago, and gave me some trauma back, and I covered up, and then the fight was over. So it was not the best fight for me, but I learned a big lesson there, to always control your emotion, your calm state of mind when you're fighting, and it was a big lesson for me.
You fought in 1997, and you took 98 off with the eye injury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and then so 99 you come back, and now in 99 you start. It looks like a list of legends that you fight. Suda is the first one. And then you come back, and I think for Api, because Api was too hot to handle, right? You fight Jose Landi, Pele.
Yeah.
So,
that was crazy.
Talk about Pele, because Pele he's not Brazilian, he's Cuban.
Yeah.
But He
Those are the
was
shootbox
known
guys.
for the Brazilian team, the shoot box guys, and he was the first guy who was really a legend from the shoot box team. What do you remember about this fight?
So the thing is, we were doing the events in Rotterdam, Ahoy, right? Appie was doing the shows there. And I was like, oh, I really want to fight there, you know? I'm one of the first guys. Why don't I get invited? So Appie and I started talking. So, okay, Martijn, I want you on the show. I said, amazing, awesome, I'm down, you know? And but because, you know, that's what irritates me a little bit nowadays. When you ask a fighter like, okay, especially in the beginning of the career, hey, John, you want to fight? I said, yeah, when is it? Against who? What's the payday? You know, you get all those questions. But back then, when people ask you, do you want to fight? You said yes. And then you start talking about the details, right? Because for us, it was details. But because we wanted to fight so bad, there were not so many events. And then Ahoy, it's like a huge stadium, you know? I was like, okay, I want to be there. So I said, yes, of course, I'm going to fight. He said, okay, nice. You have to fight Pele. It's like, what? Excuse me? And he's like, yeah, you have to fight Pele. I said, no way. It's like, I only have 5 fights. The guy had, I think, like 20 fights or something. He was ranked #1 in the world, minus 80 kilograms. He's like a beast. And he's not like a guy who takes you down and puts you in a nice chokehold. No, he was kicking the shit out of you, you know? He was there known for his bare knuckle, shootbox kind of style, kicking everybody's ass in Brazil and all over the world. And I was like, you really want me to fight this guy? I'm like, I only have 5 fights, you know? And he's like, yeah, sorry, you have to fight this guy or you won't be on the card. It's like, come on, man. And he just beat Rodney Faveres as well, you know? Rodney Glunder, Rodney Faveres. He was one of the top Dutch kickboxers. And he finished him like that, you know? And back then, remember, they had those rope escapes, so you had to submit somebody 3 times to get the win. Rodney Faveres was down easy in 3, you know? He had no chance. So I was like, okay. So Appie talked me into it. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Fuck it, you know? I just want to fight so bad. I'm just going to fight this legend no matter what. So I started preparing for the guy. And, you know, I felt more and more confident. But then when I arrived at the stadium, honestly, I have to say, I was so tensed that I started crying. I was like, wow, you know? I got myself over it. I walked into the arena. I was like, okay, I really have this fight, this guy. And then the moment, and that's strange how the brain works, right? So you're very scared. You're so tensed. Then you start warming up. You feel a little bit better. I was with my coaches there, and they slapped me a couple times in the face. And right before I went out, my song started playing. I was like, yeah, you know, I felt like really good. And I went in there. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. You know, there's no way back. What I'm going to do. So I just went there. I flipped the switch, went in there, fought the fight. And actually, he thought, okay, I'm fighting this guy from Holland, so he must be a good kickboxer. But actually, I was more of the ground fighter, you know, between us. So I thought, okay, he's the striker. I have to take him down. So then we started. I tried to engage because I knew that if I was going straight for the shoot, he would block me and he will need the shit out of me. So I was getting my striking stance. I approached him and then whoop, he took me down. It's like, what? You know, and I really had to switch there again. And eventually we had a great fight. The fight was 10 minutes. And if there was no submission or no knockout, it would be a draw. So at the end of the fight, they announced it like, okay, there's no knockout, no submission. This fight ended in a draw. That's what the ring announcer said, right? And then all of a sudden, I saw this fucker, Federico Lapenda, and I called him out on it, and he was laughing. He said, yeah. So he was his manager back then. He ran to the jury. It's like, it cannot be. You cannot make it a draw. You know, it's Pele. He's a legend. He won that fight and blah, blah. He started pressing the jury, and the Dutch guys were like, whoa, Brazilian guy, legend, Pele, and you know, okay. And then the ring announcer said, okay, sorry, I have to correct it. This fight ended in a win by decision by Pele. And Pele came to me and said, I'm sorry, man. He really liked this. If you watch the fight, I said, I'm sorry, man. I said, no problem. It's not your fault. And later I called out to Federico and it's like, hey, what you did? He said, yeah, I'm sorry, man. I had to do it. I know it wasn't the right thing, but I had to do it. I was the manager and he was so big and nobody knew you back then, you know. But actually this put me in the spotlight. A lot of people noticed me. Before I just was doing small shows and of course one fight in Japan, but that's what really put me on the map. Although I lost the fight by decision, which was not really a lost fight, but then again, you know.
Yeah, but a decision against Pele, even that, you're right. That puts you on the world stage.
Yeah.
Now, the next fight, it doesn't get any easier, man. The next fight, Andrei Semenov.
Yeah.
Another a Russian legend. Now, he came to Holland to fight you. What was, so this is Appie again, I think.
No, actually, it was another organization, but it was through Appy. Appy was the manager together with Vadim for all the Russian guys who were fighting in Japan, right? So Semenov, he fought against Rufus Lavaros, my student before, and Rufus fought him in a decision. I was like, okay, he's tough. I like the challenge. He's very strong, but I think I'm technically better than him. You know what? And for sure, I'm definitely not going to make excuses. But I was fighting in my hometown, was Arnhem. I was living there. My name got bigger and bigger, so I sold like I don't know, like 150 tickets, whatever, you know. 1 week before the fight, I was wrestling with this small wrestling dude, and I had him in the guillotine, and he flipped me over like that, you know. So I fell on my head and on my shoulder, and this, how do you call this? This collarbone popped out of it.
Clavicle.
Yeah, so popped out. I was like, oh shit, you know. It was really painful, but I was like, yeah, I sold already 150 tickets. I'm not going to back out, you know. So yeah, you know, that's what you don't do, you know, especially back then. You know, there's not so many events, and you're fighting big guys, and you're not going to pop out. You know, there's always something when you're fighting. So I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, you know, I can still move it, but yeah, fuck it, I'm going to fight. In that fight, I got Semenov in a triangle choke, like deep. So I got him in a triangle choke, really tight. And then the referee, he probably didn't recognize. And it was like, when I was holding him, Semenov tried to stack me, but my head, like this is the ring ropes, my head was like this under the ring rope. So I wasn't falling out, not at all. And it was tight, and you could hear Semenov like this, you know. He was choking. He was almost passing out. And then the referee said, stop. He said, no. I told him in Dutch, it's like, he's almost knocked out. He's almost knocked out, you know. He's almost sleeping. He's like, no, let go. You're falling out of the ring. I said, I'm not falling out of the ring. I still have a long way to go. Let me go. And I kept holding. He said, no. And he broke my leg. He took my legs apart. And yeah, Semenov was like, whoa. He got out of it. And then something else happened. I think we're in a ground position, scuffle again, and he got me in. He was in my guard. I tried to put an arm bar or arm lock on him, and he grabbed my head and he had me in a guillotine. But it was pressing so hard, and I didn't have the power because this was dislocated the week before. I couldn't defend it, and he caught me in a guillotine choke, and I lost the fight. And later, after the fight, Semenov came to me. He's like, with a translator, of course, he said, you know what? Half a second and I was out. I was sleeping. So thank you so much for the fight. I enjoyed it, and you know, he's very respectful. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He was my nemesis as well. I couldn't defeat it. Later on, I fought him again. I made a mistake when I tried to take him down, and he got on top, and I couldn't escape. So yeah, he got my number.
Yeah, I had Semenov fight for me in the USA and also here in Costa Rica a couple of times.
Yeah.
So he was definitely a warrior in many, you know, probably 50, 60 fights in his career.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So, okay, so now Suda, Pele, Semenov, these are good learning experiences. Now you go to Shudo and you fight Yuki Sasaki, who you said was also a training partner, and you got a win here, a good win, and it looks like it was a fast win. What do you remember about this fight?
So this fight, and that's funny as well, because we're reminiscing yesterday with this Costello, because you like to hear the stories, right? And we're talking about mindset and about being scared before the fight. So I told you about the fight with Pele. I was kind of scared, but also gave you some. Now I'm like sharp, you know, because this fear as you know, there's three types of people: the people who flee, people who fight, and people who freeze. And that when something happens, so that fear also gave me this fighting mentality. So what happened? I lost 3 fights. I was not in a good place, you know. Then Japan asked me to come and fight, and that Yuki Sasaki was no joke. He was good. He had good striking. I think he was a southpaw. He was very good on the ground, because I was training with him, and he was very tough, very hard to submit, you know. And Ruffles was fighting right before me. So back then, Ruffles was fighting 1 fight, and then it's me. But we only had Jan Lomulder, who's like another legend as well. Jan Lomulder was like 3 times world champion, fought Bob Schreiber, defeated Bob Schreiber in kickboxing. He fought he fought in the first Valetudo Japan Open, where Rickson Gracie was fighting as well. And he kicked that guy out of the ring. Remember that? He was like literally kicking that guy out of the ring. So he was like a tough guy. He was my corner back then. So Ruffles was standing ready to get into the ring, right? They already called his name, his music started playing, and I was sitting there on the ground like freaking nervous. I was like, because for my own fight. And Ruffles looked at me. He's like, bro, take it easy. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing on the floor? I was so nervous while he has to fight right now. And he's not nervous at all. It's like, come on, get it together. So I'm there again. I'm coaching Ruffles. Ruffles lost the decision, but he had a torn ACL, still kept fighting. So he lost the decision against a good Japanese fighter as well. One fight rest, then there was me, and I was so sharp. Maybe because I was very tense because I lost 3 fights in a row. I thought, okay, if I lose this fight, it's going to be real bad for me, And it's not an easy guy. So, yeah, he got in there. I gave him an inside low kick. The guy grabbed my leg. I fell to my back. He tried to get in with punches, and right away I secured the triangle choke, and he had to tap out. So it was very quick. It was a good win for me. I was back,
Yeah, for sure. And again, you're not kidding. Sasaki is a serious guy.
Yeah.
Now you go back to Holland and you fight in Too Hot to Handle, which I think is also Oppie with the show, and you fight another Brazilian guy, a guy whose technique was Chinese boxing, was Tulio Polaris, and I think he was living in Spain at this time. So, what do you remember about this fight, Tulio? I like him, and I remember him. I was at the UFC Brazil, and he fought in one of the alternate fights there, but he's not as tough as Pele.
No, no, but I thought he was like, I saw some of the fights. I thought, okay, if I punch or kick this guy hard, he will back up. But he was not. He was super fast. He was very fast. I remember that. That's funny. I told the same story yesterday. We were in this striking exchange, and then eventually we end up on the ground. I tried to put a leg lock on him. He got on top. He got me in the katagata, made this arm triangle. But the stupid thing he did, he went to mount position instead of to the side. So he was in mount, but it was tight, like very tight. And I heard the crowd going like, so I was closing. I was about to go to sleep. It's getting dark, and then all of a sudden there was a little voice inside me who said, "Okay, Martijn, you're in fucking Holland. You're not going to lose to anybody right here on your own fucking ground. Get out of this position." So I just I exploded. I reversed him. So, and because he was in mount, he was not on the side. So I reversed him. I got my arm out. I gave him a punch, and he was like backing up a little bit. I stood up. I turned I saw this move from Andre Pederneiras, by the way, who fought Ruben Sato. He just get up, moved to the left, to the right, and boom, gave him a sucker kick. And back then, sucker kicks were still allowed. So I gave Tulio Polaris a sucker kick, like boom, full in his face. And he was like, boom, he was dazzled. He stood up. And the moment he got up, I gave him another kick, full to his face, like boom. He got up, he recovered. I tried to get in with punches. We grabbed each other, and then all of a sudden the referee said, "Stop, stop, stop, stop." And then his nose was completely the other side and was broken, full bleeding. So the ref said, "Okay, stop, stop, stop. This is the end of the fight,"
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a tough fight. And he kept going. He was very disappointed that they stopped the fight. But also a funny fact, like you told me about the rough times back then. But I remember that I was getting into the ring, and people were just smoking on the side of the ring, and there's not smoking, just they're smoking marijuana as well, smoking marijuana, just normal smoke. So I got into the ring. I remember turning back to Raffles, my student, and said, "Raffles, give me some water, give me some water. My throat it's closing down, It's like I couldn't almost talk or breathe. So that was the craziest time, And there's not a few guys in the arena. It's like I don't know, 10, 15,000 guys, Everybody smoking, crazy stuff. Hell's Angels here, other criminals there. It was like crazy organization. But back then it was fun. I mean, we did our thing, and I was very blessed, and I really appreciate the opportunity back then. Appie and Ron gave me back then.
Yeah, I mean, the Dutch scene is exactly what you described. Is Hell's Angels, and Bob Schreiber was, I think, a bouncer at the Bulldog. This kind of stuff. So definitely a scene of crazy guys, and some, to be honest, some guys aren't even alive. There were guys that killed each other, and some real crazy stuff went on. So definitely an unbelievable experience because it was very serious.
Yeah. There's no joking around there. No, it
Now,
was really.
you said you fought Semenov again, and he had your number. That was in Millennium Sports. What was this show? Vene Vidi Vici.
Yeah. There was in Veenendaal. There was in Holland as well.
Okay.
And yeah, so I fought him there. And yeah, like I said, I made a mistake. I was doing pretty well in the stand-up as well. I was moving in, moving out because he had this crazy hard punches, but he just wanted to exchange, and I was just going in, going out, doing some kicks. And then I thought, okay, now I see opportunity, and I went in for a double leg takedown, but I had my leg placed in the wrong way, and yeah, he took me down and ended up in the mount position. I couldn't escape. So yeah, bad
Now,
mistake. It's a lesson for life.
yeah. Now here's another guy that you turned out to fight the next, and you fought a couple of times against Takeuchi.
Yeah,
What was this like? Because Takeuchi is also very good. I had him fight for me in Florida a couple of times.
yeah.
And definitely a tough guy Shudo was proud of.
Yeah. So Takuchi was like a solid guy. He was not very. I don't think he was more technical than me, or he had this thing over me, but he was very tough. He just kept going. As hard as I punched and kicked him, and from the top, from the bottom, standing up, he just kept going. And his face was a mess every time I fought him, but he was so strong and mentally strong. And physically, I just kept going. He was, and that's how he defeated a lot of those guys, So yeah, he was a tough guy. That's what I remember about him. And yeah, one time I fought, I lost to him, but I think what they later turned it to a draw, I think. But I
Yeah.
think I won that fight. But yeah, whatever, he was tough. He's a very respectful guy. He was more of he had a wrestling and sambo wrestling background, I think. Striking, not so good, but he had hard, heavy punches, especially ground and pound. His ground and pound was hard, I think he knocked a lot of guys out on the ground, and yeah, he's a decent, basic, strong fighter.
Yeah. Now you come home and you fight another Dutch guy, another guy with a lot of fights, David Dalgesh.
Oh yeah, that was for the Dutch title, yeah.
What do you remember about this fight? Because now again you're fighting at home, but there's another Dutch guy.
Yeah, so that was in Ahoy again. It was for the Dutch title. Dave Douglas, he was very physically very strong, mentally very strong. Good striking, student of Bob Schreiber back then. He was training with Hans Nijman. He's the cousin of Hans Nijman. Hans Nijman, rest in peace. He got shot as well. He's not with us anymore, but he was the cousin. He was a nephew or cousin of Hans Nijman. He's training with Bob Schreiber, Dick Vrij, and all those guys. He was like a tough guy. He was knocking out a lot of people in Holland and in Russia. I fought in Russia as well. I was fighting him, and I thought to myself, okay, I shouldn't get into exchanges with him. I know he's good in striking. He can take a punch. He's physically strong, conditionally strong. I have to go and take him down. So I was striking with him a little bit just to get his mind off me going for the takedown. I took him down 3 or 4 times. I got him the first time. I got him in the triangle choke. The referee didn't recognize it and said, "Let go." Same thing as happened to Simonov. So yeah, I let him go, and yeah, we had to start fighting, standing up again. And then I got him in 2 arm bars, and at the end I finished him with a triangle choke. So actually I won that fight 4 times. But it was like that back then, and
Yeah,
became
sure.
the champion. After that, Dave became a really good friend, and he also started training with me. So I was in his corner a couple of times when he won the KSW tournament. He fought some Polish guys in Holland. He fought we went everywhere, He's a really nice guy, very respectful, very eager to learn, and yeah, he's a good guy. I like him.
For sure. Now,
yeah.
you mentioned earlier on that when you were in Japan, you got to train with Enson Inoue.
Yeah.
And next fight, you fight Egan Inoue, his brother, who's another incredible athlete, and also I think he's like is it ping pong, or he's like a world champion in some other sport. You're racquetball, yes. Something crazy like this. But what do you remember about fighting Egan? Because Egan's mean.
Yeah, Egan. You know what? All of a sudden, there's what's the name of the guy? The guy from Hawaii, TJ. TJ calls me up, And no, through my manager, by the way, Mark De Weert back then. And he said, "Okay, you got. Do you want to fight in Hawaii?" I was like, "Whoa, Hawaii!" You know, I went there the first time I went there was 1999, and I love that country. I still love it today. It's like the best country for me in the world, and or the place to be in the world. And it's like amazing. I like the atmosphere. I like the people. I like this tropical. You know, like you're in Costa Rica. You know. So I just loved it over there. They said, "Okay, sure, I'm going to fight." What happened next? You won't believe it. I got a detached retina right before the fight, like 3 weeks before the fight. I was like, "Oh shit!" So I had to get the surgery, otherwise I would be blind on my left eye now. I got the surgery. I told the surgeon, I said, "Okay, you know what? I have a fight coming up in 3 weeks. How strong is it? Can it hold it? You know, it's a full contact MMA fight. Can I actually it was judo back then? It's like, can my eye hold up? You know?" And he's like, "You know what? After we do the surgery, it's as strong as it was before. So don't worry, but you have to be careful of infections. I'm wearing contact lenses. Don't wear contact lenses at all up to the fight. Like 1 day before the fight, put your contact lens in. So I'm afraid for infections and everything, but take it easy. You cannot do any physical activity for the next 1.5 weeks or something." So I was out for I was out training camp, but I really wanted to fight in Hawaii so bad. I was like, if I'm going to cancel this fight, I'm probably not going to fight in Hawaii anymore, you know? So eventually I went there. The day before the fight, it was the weigh-ins. I was like, okay, I put in my contact lens. One eye was going here and the other one I was going there. So I couldn't see straight, you know? I was like, shit. So I went to this press conference. And I was like this with, if you see there's pictures online and you see me squaring off with Egan. And I was like this, you know, closing my eyes almost like this, you know? And so you couldn't see my eyes were going all over the place. And like, fuck, you know. And the referee, TJ knew, because I had to tell TJ, you know, I have to get surgery. I hope I can make it, but I'll do my best, you know. Of course, TJ told Egan. The referee knew, Mr. Suzuki, from back then from Shudo. He knew. So I get into this fight. I didn't put my contact lenses on, so I had to fight with one eye closed. If you watch the fight, you can probably see it. I was fighting with one eye closed, and Egan knew it, of course. That guy never threw a high kick in his life in any fight, you know? So I saw him moving and we're going back and forth. And at one point, I see him making a move and I thought it was going to give a front kick. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to take away the front kick and I'm going to punch it with the right straight to the face, you know? Also a little bit too emotional, but I saw him making that move. And the moment I do this, he makes a high kick. So he kicks me straight in my neck, you know, boom. I went down. Back then in Shudo, you had an 8 count. So the referee stepped in, Suzuki. I got up in, I don't know, four counts or something, I don't know. And the referee stopped and said, no, stop. Because he knew about my eye, you know, and he didn't want to take too much risk. I respect him. I appreciate it. I appreciate Egan. He did the right job, you know, he did the right thing. He knew that was my weak point, and he kicked me straight in the neck on the side where my eye. And later I spoke to Egan outside in the parking, Anson in the parking lot. He said, yeah, man, Anson did his homework. He never gave a high kick in his life, you know, not even in practice. And so kick you in the neck there. He's like, yeah, I know. That's the game, you know. And Egan is a cool guy. And he's still very fit till this day. I'm following him on Instagram. Anson, I still talk to him when I'm in Japan or through internet. And they're great guys, you know. They're real warriors.
Yep. Now, the next fight is actually your last fight was against Yamashita. So what happened in this fight? What do you remember about Yamashita? Because this looks like there was something, it was overturned and became a technical draw. So it was a long fight. And why was this your last fight? What happened in your mindset?
So it was not so much the mindset, but I was fighting Yamashita, and he was a student of Yuki Nakai as well, and I was a student of his as well. Doesn't really matter. He's a good guy. He's a cool guy. He's very strong. I think I really kicked his ass, especially standing up. They gave me some minus because when he wanted to take me down, I fell backwards like this, and I hang into the ropes. But it's not like I was holding the ropes or something. They gave me a minus point. That's why it was a technically draw. Otherwise, I would have won the fight. Anyways, I didn't do good enough, so I got eventually was a draw. They gave me a loss first, then I overturned it to a draw. I think it was a good fight. I did my best. He did his best. He was beat up. I wasn't, but he had the takedowns and he was in my guard for a while. Maybe that's why they gave him those points. Judo back then was very much ground oriented, you know, very much. That's why he could score the most of the points. Anyways, I'm not complaining about the fight. The fight was good. He did good. I think it was a nice fight. But then again, right after the fight, another detached retina. So there was twice. I had, as I told you, I got this punch. I broke my eye socket. I had this blowout fracture first. And you know what? You can get a detached retina when it's in the family. It's genetics. My uncles had it. One, he was blind in one eye because of this detached retina. Second, when you have bad eyes, I have really bad eyes. I have -7 on one side. And number 3, when you got trauma on your eyes. I broke my eye. I got a blowout fracture. So yeah, I had to get it somehow, you know. I got it twice in a row. And you know what? Detached retina is really like you start getting black from here, and the black spot gets bigger. And if you're unlucky and you make too big of a move, or you're sparring, you get punches to your head because of this vibration, you can really lose your sight. You know, you can lose your vision in one eye. And I was like, okay, it's the hardest decision for me to do. But I said, you know what? I think I have to stop fighting because, and I also had a knee problem. It was a very hard decision, but I thought to myself, okay, what's more important, you know? And now it's maybe more of an ego thing, but I'm still involved. I still have fighters. I still had Alistair Overeem. I was training Alistair Overeem back then. I was still training Malus Kunin. I was still training Sia Bardazada, who was a 3 times world champion judo as well. I was still training all the other guys who were like all regional and European champions and everything. I was organizing events. Like I did judo events, organized. I started Glory. So I was like, I'm busy enough in the fight game. And actually, I had nobody really training me in MMA, right? So you have to understand that nowadays you walk into a gym and you can train MMA. Back then, it wasn't like that. So as I told you, I started with traditional jiu-jitsu, started doing karate. Then I was like, okay, I need to do some kickboxing. Jan Lohmulder came to me for his fight in Japan, and he was a 3 times world champion in kickboxing. I started training with him. He took me to Buddhist gym where there was Peter Art, Stefan Leko, all those other guys, you know. Later, I started training with Golden Glory, Lushenka Bean, and the other guys at Golden Glory, Cor Hammers and those guys. I started doing wrestling with Andy Yeko, who passed away as well, was one of my best friends. And he was a 13 times heavyweight champion in wrestling in Holland. So I started wrestling with him. But I had to go to all these kind of places and then put my own system together because Miguel, that even if you're a world champion in kickboxing, world champion in wrestling, world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're not a world champion in MMA. It's different. You have to adjust. You have to find your own stuff. So I was doing that myself. And then I had to fight myself. And at the same time, teach other people who are fighting at a high level, like Alistair Overeem, you know, all those guys, Malus Kunin, and all those other people, you know. And I was organizing events as well. So I had a crazy busy schedule. And then I thought to myself, okay, I think I'm a decent fighter, but I'm not going to be the best fighter. I'm not going to be the John Jones of the world. So do I want to keep fighting, although my health is at stake? Or will I concentrate on creating world champions of the students who are currently training with me? I'm building this organization like Glory, and I thought to myself, okay, I think this is it. You know, I should stop. And I was depressed for a week. I laid in bed, couldn't get out, but eventually I pulled myself together. I was like, okay, I have to go on. But I will never get that feeling. They have this T-shirt. I think you know this T-shirt. I think it was Bad Boy back in the days. Only a fighter knows the feeling, and it's true. Only a fighter knows the feeling. There's a special kind of feeling you will never experience anymore in your life when you stop fighting, and that's what you miss. But yeah, it is how it is, you know.
No, it's a good decision. You know, it's kind of sad when guys get to that point and they keep fighting. Also, you know, it's a wise decision. So I think you did definitely the right thing. And Glory, the team, and the building of there. And let me ask you: did you do Abu Dhabi? You went to Abu Dhabi, right?
No, I didn't. I didn't do it. But Marlus became the European champion in ADCC and the two times third place in the World Championships. And Alistair Overeem also became European champion in ADCC. So I was involved with my guys, and actually I'm still the representative of ADCC in Holland. So I'm doing events. And I had my guys fighting there, doing pretty well. So yeah, I was involved, but I never competed. Yeah, I competed in the Europeans, I think, but never in the World Championships.
Okay, so talk about building. Well, first let's talk about Alistair, because Alistair, you know, at one he's the man who beat Brock Lesnar. You know, yeah. So were you with him for this fight?
No, so that's like 1 month before that fight, he left Team Golden Glory. So okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't remember, but Alistair had a twin brother, Valentine.
Yeah, he's not a twin brother, but he's his older brother. But he
Okay.
was so talented, you know. Valentine was so talented. He defeated Randy Couture, Renato Babalu in rings back
In
then.
rings, yeah.
It's really good. And he actually Valentine was more talented than Alistair. Only his work ethic wasn't there. Alistair had less talent, and that's what I always tell people. I don't want to have the super talented guys necessarily, because the super talented guys, they're easy to walk away again or to do other things. They think they already know everything and they don't have to put in the work. But Alistair was just a little bit below that, but he kept working. His work ethic was very high, and he always found the best things for him. So I need the best physician, I need the best physiotherapist, I need the best strength and conditioning trainer, I need the best kickboxing trainer, MMA trainer. So he was really looking for the best of the best, and he put in the work, and that's why he got that far, you know. While Valentine, he did good. He had his moments. He had a good run, you know, but he didn't put in the work same as Alistair, you know. So
Very interesting.
yeah.
So talk about switching over to coaching and building the Golden Glory team.
Yeah. So actually, I started training people and coaching people in 1995 already. So I was there. I just left Remco. I was like, okay, I need people to train with, and but who can I train with? Back then, there was almost nobody, you know. So I could do some kickboxing training, some jiu-jitsu training or whatever. But yeah, I didn't have any good sparring partners. So I was like, okay, I think I should start teaching myself, creating some people so I can train myself as well. I can do some sparring. So Ruffles was one of the first guys, and he was my training partner for a long time. And one thing led to another. Like Alistair came to my gym when he was 17 years old, just 17. Maluz when he was 15, Sia Bardazada when he was 15. So I had these young people coming into my gym, and I built them from the ground up, and I enjoyed it. And then one thing led to the other. They were like, okay, now we're training, but we also want to fight. But there were not so many fights back then. So I was like, okay, and I was involved with Judo already. It's okay, let me start organizing Judo events. Start doing the Judo events. Had my students fight there, first amateur, then professionally. And then Ron Nyquist from Team Golden Glory, he came to me, he's like, you know what? Why don't we do something together and start Glory, you know? We have Golden Glory. They had back then, they had Pride, Dream, this one names, and Glory, it fitted right in, right? So I said, why don't we call it Glory? And we have our own guys. We can offer a platform to compete. And at the same time, it's a leverage against all the big organizations. So, for example, if Pride would say, you know what, we're not paying this amount, or K1 would say, you know, yeah, it's too expensive. We say, okay, no, don't worry. We have a fight in our own organization. We'll build our own organization with your stars, the stars you created already. We made them, but they put them on a big platform. So then they were like, okay, you know what? Maybe we can pay you a little bit more. So that was our leverage as well. But at the same time, to keep our guys busy, because sometimes it's not like it was the UFC, like they had an event every week back then. So Pride was what was it, 4 or 6 times a year or something? 6 times a year, I guess. So we're like, okay, we create our own organization, and even when people have a little bit downtime or they had an injury and they had to come back, we have them fight in our own organization. So everybody fought there. Alistair fought there, Gökhan Saki fought there, Nikki Holsker fought there, Errol Zimmerman, Sammy Shield, all those Marlus Kuna, everybody fought there, you know. It was a good thing to do. I loved it, but I will never do it again. I will never organize MMA or kickboxing events anymore. It's so much stress.
It's just too much work.
Too much work, and the upside is very little, you know, as you probably know.
Yeah,
only the UFC is making money, I believe.
Yeah. Now let me ask you: in Japan, when you started working with Pride, was there any friction with Shudo? Because there are some politics there, and they don't like each other.
So, sorry, I missed you for a second. So who? So Shudo?
Well, Shudo sometimes politically doesn't like fighters to go to Pride or to work with the other organizations.
Yeah. So actually, I had people offering me to fight in Pride back then, but I'm a very loyal guy. And although the organization is smaller, Shudo is way smaller than Pride. I was like, no, I'm fighting Shudo. Because they gave me the opportunity in the first place. I came to Japan, Manabu Takashima. He gave me the opportunity to stay in his very small apartment with his wife and train with all these people. I trained with the Shudo guys. They gave me the opportunity to fight there, to have my students fight there, to set up like a European league. How can I fight in Pride? For just one payday, 2 paydays? No way. I'm not going to do that. But they were okay with me having people fighting there, because Pride back then was like the UFC now, right? So they're paying a lot of money. And they also understood, like, you know what, Martijn, as long as you stay loyal to Shudo, you still have your guys fighting there. You can have Alistair, for example, fighting in Pride. Don't worry about it, you know? So they were very understanding as well. But yeah, they were, it was politically kind of, yeah, it was not easy. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, well, you handled it. You handled it the way they like. You know, with the loyalty that they like to see the loyalty. That's it's a good thing. It's a nice thing. So, what's going to happen this weekend?
So this weekend, Marcin Pragnio is going to be fighting. I'm in 304, UFC 304. I'm very excited. The only crazy thing is that the UFC is organizing the event in the middle of the night because of the pay-per-view, right? Leon Edwards is fighting. I'm lucky that my guy is one of the first on the card. So we're fighting around 2 o'clock at night, which is crazy, you know.
Wow.
But the other guys are fighting maybe 5 o'clock or 5:30 at night in the morning. That's nuts.
That
Can you
is
imagine
crazy.
F1 does that, or Roland Garros, you know, there's a tennis organization or whatever, or soccer games? It's impossible. But anyways, UFC does it, and the arena is sold out. The fighters are here, so we're excited to fight. Marcin is here, and he's very prepared. He's working on his mental game a lot. You know, we have a mental coach here as well, Daria Alberts. He's doing amazing work with him. Yeah, we're here. We're very present. You know, we're
Wow, I didn't realize that the time delay is crazy. And
yeah.
so let me ask you. So this is UFC 304. What was the first UFC that you went to?
I think the first UFC I went to was with John Olaf Einemo, but that was a long time ago. I don't even remember when it was. It was in Vancouver, a long time ago. And then Marcin has like 9 fights in the UFC, and his first fight was in Orlando a few years ago. Before that, he had a really good run in FFC, which is in a European organization. He was the champion there. Then he went to One Championships, where he was the title contender. And then before he got to fight for the title, we took him to the UFC, because you know how it is. You know, you have this champion clause. When you're the champion, your contract automatically get extended, and then you're stuck with the organization for another couple of years. So we decided to go to before they offered the fight for the championship, but we say, okay, no, we want to take our chance with the UFC. He had a difficult start, but now he's back. He won 4 out of his last 6 fights, so he's doing well. Yeah, and I expect him to put on a great show. And it's going to be 2 strikers, you know, on Saturday. So it's going to be fireworks anyways.
Yeah. Now you mentioned, because you've worked with everybody, like the European guys. You mentioned John Olaf is a Norwegian guy, but you know, he went to Abu Dhabi and did fantastic there. He
defeated Roger Gracie. Yeah.
And yeah, he destroyed Roger Gracie. I was there. I was at this one. He also beat Regan Machado.
Yeah.
You know, so when you go back, what do you remember about those Scandinavian guys? Because there's another legend from up there, Joaquin Hansen, that a lot of people don't remember, but you worked with all those guys.
Yeah, sure. And you know what? The first time I went to Norway, I did a seminar there. There was a guy from Krav Maga or something back then. He invited me to come over to Norway. I don't know how this connection got into place, but I was teaching a seminar in the gym of Joachim Hansen and John Olaf Einemo, and that's where I got to know him. So it was like a long time ago. I didn't know who they were. They were not famous at all. Then I did the first professional Shudo event in Holland, and I had John Olaf fighting in the main event. So he was there already. You know, I think it was his first MMA fight, or one of his first MMA fights. Joachim Hansen fought against Rufus LaRose. It was a crazy, crazy fight, like flying knees, takedowns, spinning elbows, like crazy. It was in Ireland. Very respectful guys, Joachim Hansen. He fought in Shudo later on. You know, I got this connection. Of course, I started with Shudo in Europe. Marco Leisten was my representative in the Nordic countries. And he got in touch, of course, with Joachim and Jon Olaf and all these other guys. And Joachim went to Japan as well. We sent him to Japan in Shudo to fight there. He did amazing. He's a really great guy, but he was like a tough. He was Norwegian guy. Yeah, he's like he was a really tough and skilled guy. He's I
Yeah,
don't know what he's doing right now, but yeah.
yeah. I'll tell you, he fought one time in the USA on my show, and
Oh yeah,
it was part of a tournament,
yeah.
and he beat a Russian guy in the first round,
Wow.
and his second fight of the tournament, which it was a tournament in many days, not all fights in one day.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the next fight was against Eve Edwards. I don't know if you remember Eve
Yeah,
Edwards.
sure. Yvette was
So
he was good.
and that's when Pride stepped in and said, no, he has a contract with us. He cannot do that fight. And they stole the fight. They did him and Eve Edwards in
Wow,
Japan. This was my
wow,
fight.
that's
so,
crazy.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
he
for
was.
sure.
I think he was the champion in judo as well. From judo champion to being a judo champion, he went to Pride. He did very well there.
Yeah, no,
Did he fight in the UFC? Did he fight in the UFC? I'm not sure.
I know he didn't get to the UFC,
Didn't.
but
No.
he was as talented as anybody.
Yeah.
For sure.
He
Yeah,
can
it
fight.
was one of those that early wave. You were part of it. The early wave of guys from Europe that were mixing the fights. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you had guys like Boss and Gerard Gordeau, guys always tough, but those guys and yourself were the pioneers of MMA in Europe, and it's unbelievable to catch up with you. Unbelievable
Like,
to see that you're still in the game and doing great things and stuff. So and you still look like you could fight.
I can, but only for a minute. Then I guess out.
Terrific. Look, Martin, it's always great to catch up with you. I want to thank you very much for the interview. Terrific going through your career, terrific going through the memories and things like that. Anything else that you want to speak about in memories that we didn't bring up here, or if not, we can let you go and get to the UFC and the weigh-ins and stuff that you have to go to.
I don't know. It's so much to talk about.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
experienced so much, and we went all over the world, and that's what I'm really grateful about. Because of the sport, I got such a huge network, including yourself, and I'm very thankful for that, and I really appreciate it. Wherever I go in the world, I have somebody who can take me around, and you see places in a different way, because now you're not just a tourist, but you have your guys there, and they can help you, they can show you around, and that's what I really like, and you know what? That's something you cannot replace with money or with anything else, So I'm very happy. I'm very blessed. I went all over the place. Actually, I lived in Indonesia for a while as well, and I
Wow.
built a strong foundation there. I'm training personal trainers there for a huge chain. It's called Evolution Wellness. I trained approximately 1,800 personal trainers in my system, kickboxing system, how to not to become world champions or to become like a great fighter, but more like, okay, how am I teaching personal trainers to give a nice workout, a kickboxing workout in a fitness gym? What is a jab, what's a straight, how to hold the pads, what's a kickboxing related warm-up or drills? So yeah, I really like that where it is now, from where it came from, where kickboxing and MMA was very frowned upon. They were like, okay, if you're kickboxer, you're a bad dude, If you're an MMA fighter, you must be a criminal. And back then I was working in a bank, right? So I was working in a bank. I was working in an insurance company. Of course, I was surrounded with those guys, because I have to admit, it attracts certain people as well. But it changed so much, and the UFC did a great job, internationally. But the kickboxing glory as well as a whole, it became mainstream, and that's what I really like. So yeah, I mean, I did my thing in Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, but I've been all over the world. I have a fit tech company right now, and I built an application where we encourage people to work out, to start moving and having fun while doing it. It's an AI-based application called Fittar, Fittar, and we're rolling this out internationally as well. I'm also involved in real estate now, buying and selling real estate in Holland and in Spain. And yeah, I mean, like, also there, even when I'm doing real estate, I have my guys there. So, okay, there's a former student of mine who lives in Spain who connects me with all the right guys, Then there's another, I have a couple of guys actually who are my former students who live there. Then I'm doing this Fittar, this fitness AI technology thing, and I'm talking to people in the US. I'm talking to people in in Bulgaria, in Indonesia, in Thailand, you know, who are all met through the sport. And we're rolling out this application now worldwide. I mean, like, that's what I really like about it. It's not only the sport, it's not only and we went
Is
to
that
the heart.
Lubo in Bulgaria?
Yeah, sure, Lubo, yeah, he's the best. He's the best,
Yeah,
Lubo, great.
for
So he
sure,
was
for
one of
sure.
the early guys as well, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And in MMA, so he's amazing. And always when we get together, like Lubo, Marco, all these guys, you know, worldwide, and with like Liborio, and for example, in the US, or whoever else, Rodrigo Nogueira, you know, when we see each other, sometimes we train together, or sometimes we just share like memories, and it's so good, just like we did, you know, to catch up with people and reminisce about the old days and see where it is today. And I'm very blessed that I'm still part of it, you know, and I have still one guy fighting in the UFC, so something must be going well.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, you go, when I think of guys from the early days, and you know, the word for you is pioneer. You know, you were one of the first guys coming forward and things like this, and that you're still in the game at the highest level and still doing things is because, you know, you really have worked at this. This has been your life. So very happy to have caught up with you, Martin. And you know, keep going, and go win this weekend. Okay.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for having me on the podcast. And I wish you all the best. And then whenever you're coming to Holland or Europe again, just give me a call, and we catch up, and I'll show you around.
Yeah, and if you ever get a chance, come down to Costa Rica. I'll show you some things. I
really would like to go. I heard it's an amazing place. That's still on my bucket list, so I'll hold you up to that.
Okay, good. Love you, man. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.